Okay, so let's start with the Nokar mantra. Om Namo Arihantanam. Om Namo Siddhanam. Om Namo Ayariyanam. Om Namo Vajayanam. Namo Loe Savasahunam. Eso Panchanamokaro. Sarva Pavapanasano. Mangalam cha sarvesim. Paramam Have Mangalam. Paramam Have Mangalam. Alright, so did anybody focus on what the words mean that time?
I did.
You did?
Same here.
That's good.
Same here.
So today we're gonna see if that meaning is correct. So who can tell me what the Nokar mantra means? What do the words mean? Last time we focused on why we should do that. So now let's focus on actually doing that.
Come on, sir.
What does the first line mean? That's the easiest one.
I pray to the Arihants.
I bow down to the Arihants, right? Okay. Now who are the Arihants?
All the sadhu, sadhvi.
No, those are the sadhus, right? So Arihants.
Oh, okay. The Tirthankars.
Arihants are the Tirthankars in human form.
In human form, right?
Correct. Okay, so what's the next line?
Siddhas.
I bow down to the...
Siddhas.
Okay, who are the Siddhas?
I think those are the ones who are the actual Tirthankars in the soul.
Correct. The wording is a little bit wrong, right? So they're the liberated souls, but they have not set up the Jain order. Remember, there's lots more liberated souls than just the Tirthankars.
Right.
There's not just 24 liberated souls. There's many, many, many liberated souls, and you and I could become one of them, and that's who we're bowing down to. Okay, so the next line.
Ayariyanam is all the acharyas. and
Right. Who are the acharyas?
Who
They're
sets
the hierarchy,
mission?
right?
Who sets the mission?
They are
Jain-
living.
Jain-
They're still living, right?
They're the overseers of our spiritual education. They're the top monks and nuns.
Right.
Okay, so the next line.
So is that self-appointed or is that appointed?
No,
I
it's
have no
appointed.
idea how
It's
you become
appointed.
an acharya.
It's an appointed
It's
by
appointed.
by the
By the
By the
group
other-
of sadhus.
sadhus
By
and
the other acharyas.
sadhus and,
No, by the other sadhus.
and acharyas.
Oh,
It has to be
alright, I'm just asking.
yeah.
Sure, yeah, that's a good. Who are our betters, right? We have to know how they
Well,
got there.
very
Well,
few
like
will
if
be
I wanted to become one, I
acharyas.
would
Correct.
like sign up, right? You know.
Very few will be acharyas.
Very well. That's what I'm saying, right?
And that's a problem, right? That we don't know, or we don't know anything about them, or that's a problem, right?
I don't know. If it's a
For
problem.
example-
Just because we don't know doesn't mean a problem. We just got to find out how to, how that works.
Last year I went to India in August and I had a chance to see one of the acharyas.
Mhm.
Therapanthis, they had an acharya back, they had a pravachan. So
How was it?
yeah, it was good. But
Did
it
you
was,
were you able to ask any questions?
No,
No.
no, no. It was obviously monologue.
Okay.
Where they gave a pravachan for about an hour, and what was surprising is when he walked out, he was given a grand exit. Like there was music behind, there was Azimo Shah and that kind of a thing. I didn't expect that. We are
Right.
Sthanakvasi, so we just went there because there was a big diksha.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
multiple people, like a group of people.
correct.
Right. That's great. Yeah, and that's more for the people, all that music and stuff. than
Yes,
it
yes,
is
just
for
to
the acharyas,
just
right?
to pull the crowd and yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so Namo Uajayanam. Who is that? What does that mean? It means I bow down to the Upadhyas.
Upadhyas.
Who are the Upadhyas? You can remember that because you and
That's
you.
all the nun and monks, right?
That's sadhu sadhu.
No, that's other side.
So Upadhyayas will be between the acharyas and sadhu sadhu.
That's right, exactly. It's one step on the hierarchy down.
So who would that be? Name one.
So There are many Upadhyayas.
So
but,
the one who then becomes Acharya, is that the...
Yes.
Oh,
So Acharya would be the one who would set the mission. If you look at here, like you have the board of directors and then you have the executive committees and then you have, so that's hierarchy, right? So Acharya and then Upadhyaya. Upadhyaya is going to be taking this type of lectures and more every day-to-day activities, what's happening, observing the path has been set by the Acharya. Yeah, Acharya has set the path. Upadhyaya will walk the path and make sure that things happen. And then Sadhu is actually the day-to-day interaction with people.
Right. So the next one, Namo Loe Savasahunam. That's I bow down to the sadhus and sadhus. Right. And so completing the Nokar mantra. These five, for this Panch Parmesti, when you bow down to all of the Panch Parmesti, you can eradicate all your sins.
Right.
And this prayer is the foremost among all that is auspicious. So there's this thing, right? Well, that's one way to look at it. So you can think about, when you say the Nokar mantra, you can think about, well, I bow down to these people. And you can think about, oh, these are the different people. But then that begs the question, why am I bowing down to these people? Right? What is the purpose of bowing down to these people? I know I'm not worshiping them people. I'm worshiping their characteristics. I'm wishing that I could rearrange my life to emulate those characteristics. But then what are those characters? Right? We just keep on asking, when we say what something means, we can go back and back and back and back. But here's where we're going to stop, these characteristics. I'm going to tell you that we're going to talk about 108 characteristics that we think about. And so if you think about that, well, if you have 108 things to think about, this is the only prayer you need, right? You could think about one of these a day, one of these every time you do the prayer. You can think about how they interact, right? So this is enough, right? So let's talk about 108 attributes of the Panch Parmesti, which we call it. So, interesting beginning. So the scriptural name of the Nokar mantra is the Namaskar Mahamangal Sutra, which is very fancy. Sometimes that's called the Namaskar Mangal Sutra. Later, it was changed to the Namaskar mantra. And then later, for common people, it's called the Nokar mantra. So if you like to be fancy, then you can call it the Namaskar Mahamangal Sutra. So we have 108 attributes. And that's how many beads are on a mala, right? 108? Okay, so maybe that's a good reason why. So the Arihants have 12, the Siddhas have 8, Acharyas have 36, Upadhyas have 25, Sadhus and Sadhvis have 27, and that makes for a total of 108. Some of them overlap, so we don't have to go through, you don't have to make a list of 108 in your notebook there. So let's talk about Arihants. So Arihants are Tirthankars in human form. They've gotten rid of the 4 Gati karmas and they still have Agati, and when those are destroyed, then they become Siddhas, right? They set up the four or five-fold order of the Jain Sangh, and they have 12 attributes. The 4 main attributes are omniscience. They deliver extraordinary sermons for the benefit of humanity. They're worshipped by the common people, and no calamities or diseases exist in their vicinity. Okay? These 4 attributes are sometimes, different sects believe that the 4 attributes are infinite knowledge, infinite perception, perfect conduct, and infinite energy, which we talked about are the characteristics of all souls, right? But they express them because they have gotten rid of these karmas. There are 8 other attributes, the lesser attributes. A divine seat from where the Arihant delivers his sermon. A halo behind his head. Okay, so that's why you see that depicted in all the paintings and artwork. Angels waving fans to honor their greatness. A 3-tier divine umbrella over the head, which suggests that he is the spiritual king of the entire universe that consists of hell, earth, and heaven. You remember that as we did our geography class? The next one, a tree under which he sits to deliver his sermons. The next one, a continuous shower of fragrant flowers. The next one, a divine announcement declaring their sermons. And the last one, celestial music accompanying their sermons. So what's the point of all this? Like, why am I supposed to, when I say a prayer, like, why am I supposed to remember, like, showers falling over the Aryan's head? Or why am I supposed to, why is that important that that's an attribute?
One step more than what we have.
I don't know, maybe it's supposed to, it's not, maybe it's supposed to appeal to your senses, right? Even though it's wrong, right? We learned very early on that it's wrong. Like, why am I supposed to, why do I want flowers? Why do I want a slave waving a fan behind me? Why is that something to emulate? I have no idea. I don't have an answer for you, okay? So let's just maybe think about these 4 ones. These 4 ones are good to emulate.
So
just know that these other ones
104?
are there.
We're at 104? Instead of 108, we're at 104.
Well, that's something to ask the Acharya when you meet him next. Is why am I supposed to know that? Why am I supposed to feel some kind of way knowing that
On his
he
exit,
sits
you can
under a
stop all
tree?
of that. You can, on his exit, you
You
can
know?
stop all of that. No dole, no this, no that, no grand
Tell me
exit.
this, tell me this.
Stop all of this now.
So here's some interesting things that'll stick in your mind, also of questionable relevance to your soul. By birth, the Arihant has the most beautiful, powerful, and proportionally built body with 1,008 birthmarks. Okay? His blood is white like milk. So that's why, when the snake bit Mahavir in the foot, then what appeared to be white milk came out. His breath is fragrant like a lotus. Okay? So he never has to brush his teeth. His body does not generate any waste, which is nice. That would be a good thing to have. And he is always disease-free. He has a very soothing voice that can be heard from long distances. Humans and animals can understand his sermons. He can be seen and heard in all 4 directions at the same time. And everyone listens to his sermons. When they listen to it, they keep their animosities aside. In his vicinity, the weather is always pleasant and no calamities for miles. As we said, disease-free all around him. I'm not sure why we need to know these things either. But maybe, maybe there's something to aspire to. So maybe, maybe it's supposed to appeal to our, lesser instincts, right? Our non-ideal instincts that, maybe, this is something to be or this is something to respect. I'm not sure. Questions are on the Arihants. I'm sorry I don't have answers for you today for some of these questions. Okay, so Siddhas. As we said, Siddhas are the non-Tirthankar liberated souls, and when the Tirthankar dies, he becomes a Siddha just like everybody else. 8 attributes. We went over these. You know these by heart probably by now. Infinite knowledge, infinite perception. Hey, come on in. Perfect conduct, infinite energy, uninterrupted happiness, immortality, formlessness, and equal with all other Siddhas. So that's interesting. The book says that each Siddha has its own personality, but it's equal with all the other ones. So there's not like a difference in power or characteristics, but apparently each soul is an individual. And that, hey, come on in. And that makes us different from something like Buddhism, right? Where it's more emphasis on the collective and everybody is the same soul or the same person or we're all the same kind of... But here is I think we delineate this often because we want to differentiate ourselves from Buddhism. So all these souls in moksha are all different, but they all have the same characteristics. Today we're talking about the 108 attributes of the Panchparmesti. So last week we talked about, it's important to know what the prayers mean, right? And it's important to think about what they mean. And I suggested that if you think about something else, you're not doing it correctly. So this time we're going to say, what does it mean? So we talked about the literal meanings of the words. I bow down to the Aryans. I bow down to the Siddhas. And now we're talking about, what does it mean? Why am I bowing down to these people? And we're bowing down to these people because they exhibit 108 attributes. Arihants exhibit 12, and now we're on Siddhas, which exhibit 8 attributes. And these are the attributes we want to emulate.
Is there a significance of number 108? It comes up quite often.
Yeah, I think so. I can't tell you that there's an overarching significance other than the areas which it comes up. I don't know why it's the same number throughout these things. But we discussed earlier, it's probably that's why there's 108 beads on the mala, because we want to think about these 108 attributes. Okay, so acharyas. 36 attributes of the acharya. Remember that these are people, they're people alive today. We had a meeting with an acharya, but no questions allowed. Did you listen to the sermon?
Yeah.
Oh, how was it?
Yeah, I mean, at that point in time, you feel good about whatever is being, and if you're going continuously, I mean,
Yeah.
almost for a week, then you can follow, because otherwise it becomes difficult to. He normally will talk about something from like a story, and then it goes on for like 7 to 10 days. So that way, that keeps the motivation to go every day. In the
Yeah,
morning.
that's great.
Yeah.
Like a cereal.
And he breaks it exactly at a point where it is very curious to come and
That's a secret of the job. Yeah.
Better than Netflix.
It's a trick of the trade. Yeah. So the acharyas carry on the teachings of the last Tirthankar, Bhagwan Mahavir. There are spiritual leaders, and they are responsible for the welfare, our spiritual welfare. So that's a problem if we don't know the names of any acharya, right? They have 36 attributes. The first 5 are control over their 5 senses. The next 9 are the ways to guard against sensual pleasure. So this is good. Remember we talked about brahmacharya as one of our minor vows. And well, how do we want to practice it? Well, here are 9 ways to practice it. They're really extreme ways, but don't stay near a place where persons of the opposite sex, eunuchs, or animals live. Don't be alone with the person of the opposite sex. Don't observe the body of the person of the opposite sex. Remember, they control their sight, right? So they can control where their eyes look. Don't sit at the same place where a person of the opposite sex has been sitting until a decent amount of time has passed. Don't listen to the conversations of a couple, and don't live in a place where you must share a common wall with a couple on the other side. Don't think about any sensual pleasures or experiences of the past. Don't consume intoxicating foods or liquids, because, that might lead to sex. Don't eat tasty food. Eat simple food in moderation. This is not the non-sexual version of pleasure. These are pleasures of the other senses. And don't adorn or decorate your body and wear simple clothes. So if you're looking for ways to practice brahmacharya, these are 9 good ways, and they're 9 attributes. The next, of course, we've discussed many times. They're free and detached from the 4 passions, Krodh, Man, Maya, Lobh, which are anger, ego, deceit, and greed. The next we've also discussed many times. They observe the 5 great vows. We observe the 5 minor vows. Well, how do they differ from each other? Well, let's talk about it briefly. Nonviolence, complete and total commitment to nonviolence. Truthfulness, speak only the harmless truth. Remember, a harmful truth is not truth at all, even if it's factually true. Take only those things which are duly given. Okay, that's a highest version of non-stealing. Celibacy is complete and total avoidance of sensual pleasure. And non-possessiveness, the highest form is no money, no property, no ornaments. The only thing you have is a clothing on your back and 1 pot to accept the food that is given to you. The next 5 attributes are the 5 codes of conduct, which we've briefly discussed. The right knowledge, right faith, right conduct regarding ascetic life, and right conduct regarding observation of the austerities. And then right mental, verbal, and physical abilities. The next 5 are the 5 samitis. Remember how we be careful, carefulness in movement, speech, accepting alms, handling clothes, and getting rid of your bodily waste. Remember, this is how we practice samvar. We talked about this during samvar. The next 3 are restraints of thoughts, language, and physical activities, man, vachan, and kaya. And those are 36. And there's a nice table here. 5, 9, 4, 5, 5, 5, 3 equals 36. So the Digambar tradition has 36 attributes, which are a little bit different, totally different. Not eating for a set period of time, eating less than is needed. Again, we are the religion about eating. Penance, staying in a forlorn place, being kind of a hermit. These next ones are repentance, humility, selfless service, meditation. So these are all actions. The next are the 10 virtues, which we talked about at length. Forgiveness, humility, straightforwardness, satya or contentedness, truth, restraint of all the senses, austerities, renunciation, non-possessiveness, celibacy. The next ones are right faith, knowledge, conduct, austerity, energy, vigor. These overlap with the previous. The next one are prayer, devotion, studying of scriptures, self-restraint, penance, imparting of knowledge. And the last 3 are control over mind, speech, and body. That's the 36 Digambar traditions of the Acharyas. So questions about that. Questions about the Acharyas and why we're supposed to emulate their conduct when we pray. So this is a lot to think about when you pray, right? This could take up your whole life, is to think about 108 of these things, right? This could take up your whole existence. And that's why we say that this Namaskar Mangal Sutra is the foremost among all that is auspicious, right? Because this is Jainism as a nutshell. What I'm doing is recapping for you all of Jainism that we've ever learned, right? And so that's contained in the Nokar mantra because it contains the 108 attributes, right?
Last time we talked about that, why, for example, if we say Nokar mantra before eating,
yes.
What does it
What does that have to do with food?
Food, right? But
Well,
here
yeah.
we learn about it. Here
Exactly.
it has everything to do with that food, right? It reminds you about how acharyas treat the food. And earlier you said, I mean, as you know, I mean, you were religion about the food.
Right.
And our Aryan, Siddh, Acharya, Upadhyaya, they all signify some amount of non-attachment with food or taste or things like that. So I guess there is a connection between,
I think so,
between the food and saying that beforehand. And if we think about it in terms of understanding it, let's say even Acharya, since we're on Acharya right now, that okay, these are the Acharyas do not eat, consume food for intoxicating food or liquids and things like that. So we can keep that in mind during we do the prayer before that.
Sure. But when you asked the question, were you thinking about that when
No.
you said the prayer
No.
before the food?
No.
Right, okay.
Absolutely not.
So now that your mind has changed, now my answer for you is yes.
I agree.
So when you send in Nokar and you know you're gonna have idli sambar for lunch,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have 4 idlis or 2 idlis, right? You're trying to minimize, right? That's what you're thinking about, right?
Right. Yeah. That's the next step.
So questions about the Aryans. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, Upadhyas. Upadhyas are the title given to sadhus who have acquired complete knowledge of the Jain scriptures, remember the agams which are lost to us, and philosophical systems. They teach the scriptures to us, lay people. And they have 25 attributes. The attributes are the symbolic representation of the 25 Jain scriptures that they study. Okay, so 11 agams, the canonical text, 11 Anga Agams compiled by Ganadhar, who were the immediate disciples of Tirthankar, 12 Upanga Agams, which were compiled by Shruta Kevalis Acharyas, 1 scripture of proper conduct, known as the Charan Satari, and 1 scripture of proper practice, known as the Karan Satari. Anybody read these books, these scriptures? No idea, see? So, whose fault is that? Is that our fault? Is that an Upadhya's fault? Is that an Acharya's fault? Or some combination of the 3?
I think they are written in a language which we cannot
Right,
completely
right.
understand.
Prakrit, right?
Right.
Prakrit, yeah. So what acharyas or what sadhus have done is they've tried to translate them into Hindi
Mm-hmm.
and with giving some meaningful descriptions in between along with stories. So that makes it slightly more easy to comprehend or read,
Right.
but still it needs a lot of patience and time to even go through it.
So that's a problem, right? I'm receiving like fifth-hand information that's been translated through 3 languages. This book is in English, right? And it's been translated from Hindi or Gujarati, which has been translated from Prakrit. And I'm getting that kind of filtered down through everybody's brain by the person that wrote this book and the person that translated it. So that's a problem, right?
Google might not have it.
Google doesn't have it.
I think it's a problem for the very detailed questions that I might have. I don't think it's a problem for the basics. The things that I need to liberate my soul, I don't think it's a problem. I think that's been translated fine. But for the very kind of detailed, nuanced questions, I think it's a problem.
One thing I do know, and part of the reason it's not on Google yet, because at least my understanding of this on this topic is, we as Jain Samaj hasn't invested enough in it.
Right.
Because if we would have, from resource standpoint, it would have that available to us.
Mm-hmm.
I do know now, at least one Maharaj Sahib and his followers, or his sadhus, are doing this work. They're going into Adichar, analyzing it, and understanding it. These are all gold medal IITs that are working on it right now, that have taken Diksha. Now, one thing I see is, as I hear them or I've heard from them, that as a Samaj, apparently we haven't invested enough in this.
Right.
I mean, those who are doing research, I mean, this is not a commercially funded research, which flows through, medical and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's just, it's the pace is slow because of that reason.
Right.
Also
Well,
the
last year,
also the population or number of Jains in the world itself is, if you compare this with anything like say Christianity, where they have funds almost, there's no times. Just look at Vatican and their funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus what we have, and how we channelize that money to be able to get something onto Google, or even to have, for example, these things translated and be available as a common searchable word. Because I think there are some steps being taken to get that, but we are still very far away.
So last year we had a lecture over here from the UT professors who came over here and gave us that they have, obviously they can't teach the religion in the universities, but they have started base of the Jainism and started teaching the Prakrit to Sanskrit translation, and a lot of kids have joined that, which is based on the Jainism. And also the rice is now, we are offering Mahavir, the scholarship on the name of Mahavir Swami and all that. So we have the classes in Rice University here too. I think Sulekinkal, he has done tremendous job around the US at least. People from Hungary, Belgium, a lot of professors, they are getting involved, and a lot of the base is still yet to be formalize it, but then there are a lot of movement happening. There are some vocal Sanskrit series on YouTube that has started as well, not based on Jainism, but it comes from Prakrit to Sanskrit, Sanskrit to other languages. Comes to it. India has a lot of, like you said, a lot of different sadhus and acharyas, but all I see right now is, like you mentioned, when he was going back, there are a lot of celebration. So now it's like, my panth is better than your panth, and that comparison has started a lot, which is anti-Jain concept, but that it goes into him.
So there seem to be some roadblocks in the flow of information, right? From the top to the bottom. And that's how it's supposed to be. The information is supposed to flow from the top to the bottom. But we're like in the dark, we're not getting it, We need some kind of channel. We need to dig a channel to get that flow of information to us, right?
And they're not supposed to, use vehicle to travel, right? I mean, so coming over here and doing this thing compared to other religion,
Yeah.
they can freely travel. Swaminarayan, Buddhist monks can travel compared to Jain monks.
So, what does a sadhvi or sadhu want in order to be resident here? They don't want money, right? What do they want? Do they want a place to preach? Do they want a place to live? What can we offer a resident sadhu and sadhvi to attract one here and keep one here?
The only way to do it, I think, is person take diksha over here, stay here.
Right.
And then everything is so far off, right? If you compare to take any city in India, say Mumbai or any sadhus can just go 1 kilometer and get their food.
Right.
But here, imagine if they're staying here, I don't know if there's any house within a mile also. where
But they are not supposed to stay at one place too, right? Every
4 months.
Chaumasu, right?
Yeah.
You just settle in one place for Chaumasu because of monsoon season, right?
Correct.
You stay in one place, but other than that, they are constantly moving around the entire India.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, we
That's-
could have one move around the entire
In the
United
US.
States, right? Even if we had like one or two moving around, then we'd get one once a month or something. Then I could ask him a question about what you guys talk about.
Or you can go to Acharya and convince them to deploy someone.
we have
Right,
those
uh,
three.
But what do they
sadhus,
want?
right?
Yeah.
Some
Well,
sort of-
Acharya can't ask you for
What
something.
yeah, I don't know.
Right?
Well,
There must be an exchange of some kind, right? To get somebody here. But they don't want money, they don't want food, do they want a flock of people to shepherd?
Well,
Maybe not. I don't know what a sadhu or sadhvi wants.
Well, I mean, there are other religions who brings. So first, I mean, we have these limitations for our sadhu and sadhvis. But if we think about it, what we really need is the knowledge, right? We want to learn
Absolutely.
from them.
Yeah.
Actually, sadhus and sadhvis are taught by the pandits who are allowed to travel, like Champak Bhai Pandit and all the others. They're allowed to travel. So if you're just hungry for knowledge, we can get pandits. There are lots of them who are willing to come.
Oh, we don't need them to come. We can do Skype.
Right.
It's different. In fact, Chinmaya Mission brings them. BAPS brings them.
JVB.
JVB brings them. So what we really need is I've seen even in small Beaumont community where there is they employ two. It's one is just a priest who does all the priest activities, and other is just this brahmacharya, and they actually both are salaried. And even though this person is brahmacharya, I mean, obviously, he needs living. So those commitments are required, and the challenge is to have accommodations for them, the insurance, and things like that. It's at the end of the day, there is financial support is required, whether they take money themselves or
Right.
their family members or things
Right.
like that.
Right.
I think the commitment from community, and the second thing that also is important, for example, if you're hungry for knowledge, if we require a medicine for diabetes, we're gonna somehow fund the diabetes by paying enough money for it, right? So if you're hungry for knowledge for this pandits or sadhus or sadhvis, have you ever heard about a fund gathered here in terms of funding Jainism learnings?
Right.
I mean, even sadhus nowadays in India, what I've heard is what they say. We definitely don't want money. Sadhus can't keep money, but what they want is to pay to the pandits so they can teach the sadhus. There are a lot of people taking diksha, but they have to have a fruitful knowledge. So now they can take this information and bring it to us.
Yeah, so you think there might not be enough interest, and that's why we don't see it, right? Because if there was that, we would have seen
There's
we would have
maybe
seen a
interest,
box
but
in the
it's not
temple.
priority.
Yeah, it's exactly.
There may be interest, but it's not priority.
It's a minority interest right now, but everybody is in that competition of who looks better, and it's not converting Prakrit to Sanskrit. You can become a top person by doing that. It's a lot of time and effort that's required. So it's unfortunate, but that's where I mean my family members are in Diksha, and that's what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the biggest thing is right now. To teach one person for 1 month to this sadhu right now is 15,000 rupees a month. The pandit will come and teach them, and you have to recognize that they travel. So this pandit will either from the vicinity or that pandit is traveling and teaching them. But that's an expense. I mean, they can't take money, so how would they bear this expense?
Yeah.
So, I'm not clear on this. So Pandit is teaching sadhus,
Yeah.
all that. Why are there senior acharyas or whoever that level of hierarchy is not teaching? Why is the person who's
Because they're the board of trustees. They're long range vision.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It is the
That's how the hierarchy is. They don't go teach. They tell someone to get taught.
they already know it.
Listen, if I'm looking for an MBA for my company, I don't go teach an MBA. I hire someone that's an MBA. So I tell them that here, I'll fund your MBA. You go to MBA. I'm just giving you a realistic example.
that can be different in this reality? The fact that this person who's just learned it, and I don't know how much experience they have, right?
A lot. They if you ask like a pundit like really technical questions, they'll bring the sheet back and they'll say, okay, this is how we start. I've seen these guys like draw things, like how did you come up with that, right? And they're like, well, this came from this, and this came from this, and this came from this. If you really like those guys that really teach, like there's this Dheeraj Bhai Mehta, he's a pundit. He's been coming here for years. I used to shoot the videos at our temple. Actually, it used to happen at our house before our temple, of him speaking, and people would come 2.5 hours. They would have lunch, and then we would have another 2.5 hours. A 5-hour day, Saturday and Sunday. And it would start on Friday for 2 hours, then 5 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday. 80 people used to show up religiously because he had a way of the Netflix, right? He had the the line that he would break at a certain point, saying, "Well, think about this and come back tomorrow," right? And he would do that, and he was very, very good at doing that. You know what? It's funny you say it. I probably even have all these VHSs. I'm gonna bring you one because of that. I'm gonna tell my dad to ship one to me. But it's just to see how detailed it is. It's not like, well, by the way, it's like this, right? I mean, and I've just seen it from my own experience, But they teach, like, there are other sadhus or sadhvis that I've met, and they're like, yeah, I went to his school. It's like, what? So there's definitely some fundamental behind that.
In the other words, I mean, the acharya who became acharya, right? That you were expecting to lead a flock of 40 people or things like that. That acharya already has, let's say he's an expert in one side, but then he wants his entire group of sadhus to learn different things. So he may or may not know. I mean, he may have learned one agam out of this in his life because there's so much knowledge and so much. He can't learn everything and teach everything to his followers.
Well, all I'm saying is, if the pandit has it, then why is it not possible for the acharya to write?
They can, acharya can expert, he can learn from one pandit for Dheeraj Bhai, and he's expert on Dheeraj Bhai, so he will cover that topic. But then there's another topic that is learned by Champak Bhai, and he's expert on this one. The acharya never got to the Champak Bhai and learned that, so he's sending his disciple to Champak Bhai, and then third and fourth and fifth, so that you get
It's kind of like
as much as
corporation
possible.
structure, huh?
Yeah.
Politics.
Politics is one part of it, but
Yeah.
I mean, the CEO doesn't know about HR. He hires an HR manager, right? So that's how this is kind of funneling out.
So just to complete the circle, there are 27 attributes of the sadhus and sadhvis, which we've been discussing. Remember, they are the people, they're householders that took diksha, and then they renounce the world, and then they become sadhus and sadhvis. So their attributes are the 5 Mahavrats, which we discussed. To protect one sense beings, remember we talked about one sense beings, including fire, water, earth, and air. To control their pleasures, 5 senses, which we discussed. The 5 samitis we discussed. Control mind, body, and speech. Not to eat before sunrise and after sunsets. Forgiveness, avoidance of greed, endure hardship, endure suffering, be introspective. Keep the heart pure. I'm not sure what that is. That might be one of the translation things.
Is that eat ghee, or is that what that means?
Keep the heart pure. I'm not really sure what that means. So there are some, as with the previous ones, sometimes these 27 are counted differently. We have, what are the differences here? We talk about the Bhavnas and the Guptis, and then conquering of Parishahas, which is enduring hardships. And this one is the big difference, Sanlekana, which is endurance and fearlessness towards death and the associated pains. That's what we're all striving for, Sanlekana, right? Is to be courageous in the face of death and all the aches and pains, spiritual, mental, and physical, that dying brings about. So, the attributes of the sadhus in Digambar tradition are 5 Mahavrats, of course, 5 Samitis, 5 senses, 6 essentials. Not sure what those are. The book doesn't go into detail about that. 6 other attributes: no bathing, plucking your own hair, sleeping on the floor, no brushing your teeth, eating food in a standing posture only, and eating once a day. Remember, these remind yourself that the body is different from the soul, right? It doesn't matter what your breath smells like. It doesn't matter whether you take a bath or not, because we're not worried about our body, we're worried about our souls.
What's this eating food and standing posture?
Yeah, that's new to me.
I've always been told that sit down and eat.
Yeah, even drinking water, sit down.
Right.
Even
Why would we eat food in a standing posture?
I think to limit the content, if you're standing and eating, then you're eating little bit.
I probably tell my kids 10 times a day, like, sit down and eat. Sit down.
Don't get up.
Don't get up, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I would think that would be my guess, is to make it so it doesn't become an event. If eating becomes an event, then, well, you want something good and you want to have a nice table and it doesn't become a thing, an event in your life. It is just one thing that you do to keep living.
If that's the case, if it's the way coming from sub-scriptures, it's exactly opposite what I've heard.
Oh, really?
All time from. I even remember an instance where we were volunteers serving the food, and there's a pant called Ramsuri in Swetambar. There are two main saints, Ramsuri and Nemisuri. Ramsuri, I remember that distinctly. That if you are if you put a kachori in your mouth while you're serving, they'll make you sit right there. They'll bring you the entire thali, and you have to eat over there. I mean, you basically just a no to stand up and eat.
But why?
It's again, I don't know the why reason. I've always
We have to know that. To make a decision on which one is better for our life, we have to know why.
Another instance, I know that when we had Diksha of my kaka, he insisted, no matter how 1,000 people or 2,000 people, he insisted that everybody has to sit down and eat.
Right.
We're not gonna just feed. We're not gonna do a buffet.
Right.
So I don't know why, but it's my understanding, based on what I've heard, it's at least from religious sources, that we should sit down and eat and not eat while just walking and standing and things.
Here's what I would think. Here's if I were to give a reason why we should sit down instead of stand up. I would say that, well, we want to be careful about what we're putting in our mouths. We don't want to mindlessly do it. We want to make sure that it's the right thing. There are no insects, things like that. So that's what I would say. So now I have arguments on both sides, right? Standing and sitting and eating.
I think here it doesn't talk about walking and eating or having it as buffet style, but just standing in a single posture, or basically you are
Eating in one shot versus standing up and eating? Is that what you're telling me?
basically you're not roaming around and eating like in buffet. Normally what we do if we go to any say marriage, or you go to the stall
Station.
and then
The
get
station.
so many stuff and then come back, finish, and then again go back. So that is not, I don't think that is what it says. It
Of
says
course.
you just stand wherever you are
Right.
in that place, and whatever portion you've taken, you finish that at one go, and that's it. You're not going to the multiple stations.
Right.
That is what I'm guessing here, but yeah, we can check.
And that would take care of our mindfulness problem. Like you can
Correct,
still
correct.
stand and pay attention to what you're eating.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So questions on any of that. So now we learn, so this is just the one prayer. It's the most important prayer because these 108 attributes basically comprise the whole of Jain religion that you can think about while you say this one prayer. So now we know what the words mean, why we should bow down to these people, what aspects we're trying to emulate, right? And then at the end we get this reminder that, oh, this is why I'm doing this. This is the greatest of all prayers because it encompasses all of these things. So now I think that our prayers based on last class and this class, I think that our prayers could be much more effective. Questions or comments on any of that? Anybody try this week to think about what the words mean and felt differently about it, or felt not differently about it? Anybody realize that they lapsed into their previous habits and then were saying prayers at night, or were wishing for something, or were thinking about something totally else while they were mouthing the words of the prayer?
Yeah, I think I was being more conscious when I was praying this week, and not wishing or asking for, even though it was mostly to do with these passions, to not get something. Even then, I was thinking that maybe I should not ask for it. It would come automatically, is what I
We should ask ourselves for the strength to embody these characteristics.
Let me ask you, if kids are sleeping, laying down, is it okay to say the Loka Mantra then? Because they don't want to.
Sure. So here's an interesting question that goes one step behind your question, right? If I am saying the prayer for the kid, like, who is getting what kind of benefit?
Oh no,
right?
I'm not.
I am saying.
I typically tell them to sit up.
Say it with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can say it with, but I typically tell them to sit up and say it.
Right.
Sometimes they're already laying
Oh,
down.
okay.
They're like in
Oh,
their-
is it a problem laying down?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we just talked about standing up. That was.
So the position you're in when you say the prayer does not matter unless it's affecting your ability to focus on what the
Okay.
words mean. Because you can do yoga lying down, but if you fall asleep, then it's bad, right? But if you're focused and you do the meditation lying down, some people do meditation lying down, right? That's fine. You can do prayer standing up. You can do meditation standing up. But then if you don't focus, if you focus on your legs hurting or whatever, then that defeats the point of the meditation. So you can do prayers lying down unless it defeats the point of the prayer. Other questions or comments? That's good. We need some more practical stuff. What I was interested in is like, am I saying the prayer for my child, or am I getting any benefit from the prayer, or like, am I teaching them the prayer? But I think I should say it with them, and then that would be helpful instead of me reciting the prayer in front of them.
I'll send you guys this video for this. It's called Metro Park. It's like it's a Indian reality series, And in the first episode, this family moves into a new house, so they call some pundit. They're not in this area, so they just like look up a pundit online or Facebook, and they're like, oh, we're gonna call this guy. So he shows up, and he sits down, and he has this he's like, you have the eco-friendly one.
Yeah. I've seen that.
And the e-puja, right? And so the guy,
you
you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
So
I've
he brings this thing. It's and then it's like, well, it's eco-friendly, so there's no fire or anything, right? So it's a digital pad, And then there's a part of it where he's like, well, now it's your turn to put ghee, right? So you push the button, and it's like,
fire.
and there's fire that like comes out of this digital, like it's a TV screen that we're all sitting around. And I'm like, Toba, this is brilliant. We should get this. Like, do they sell this? Because this is what it's going to become, right? Are you outsourcing your puja, right? Are you telling someone else in India to say, okay, well, you say it and I'm here, right? And this happens in India too, right? Like someone's like, hey, I have to go to this place and do this darshan, right? Anamukarides, right? It's like, well, how does that help you? Or does it really help you,
Remember, we learned last time that puja is a form of physical prayer. So the actual coconut being there isn't the point. The actual fire being there isn't the point. The point is that it is more interruptions for you to stay focused and not have your mind be distracted. Thanks everybody for coming this week. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.